Good evening, everyone. The June 9th, 2022 meeting of the Rent Control Board is called to order. Would the Secretary please call roll?
Yes, Commissioner Teroses.
Here.
Vice Chair Foster.
Here.
Chair Duran.
I am here.
All right, Commissioner Sultan will be joining us later.
Okay, very good. Moving on to approval of the minutes for the May 12, 2022 meeting. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes at the last meeting?
Yeah, I've reviewed them. I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Teroses, like to second?
Yeah.
Okay, second by Commissioner Teroses. Then can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, Commissioner Teroses.
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
Chair Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 6, special agenda items. These are brief announcements. Awards, commendations, introductions, special guests. Do we have any special agenda items?
Yes, I have a couple of things this evening. Good evening, commissioners. I just wanted to announce that at the end of this month, we will be mailing our summer mailing to all property owners and tenants of controlled rental units. The owner's mailing will contain what we call a MAR report, which lists the current rents for all of the units, the general adjustment for this year, and what the new rent will be in the future, what the maximum would be. It will also include the information sheet that owners are required to provide to new tenants at the time of lease signing. Tenants will also receive a copy of the information sheet, as it's a good summary of many of the major provisions of the law. Additionally, registration fee bills will be mailed to property owners at the end of June, or the end of this month, and they're due by August 1st. And if they're paid by August 1st, they may pass through half of the monthly fee to tenants. To ensure that payments are made in time, we encourage people to make their payments online, either by credit card or e-check. And it can be done for less than the price of a stamp. We're also going to include a QR code to make that easier for people. So that's all I have for announcements this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Foster, Vice Chair Foster.
Thank you for that announcement, Tracy. I wanted to ask you, just for the benefit of the public, how often does our board contact tenants by mail per year?
Tenants? Was that your question? Well, 3 times officially. We have 2 newsletters that go out to all property owners and all tenants of controlled units. And then this summer mailing goes to everybody as well. So there are 3 official mailings, and then there are, on occasion, we will do additional mailings.
And what about landlords? Approximately how many times a year is the agency proactively contacting landlords?
The same 3 mailings we're sending to both tenants and property owners.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarification.
Sure.
Okay, any other commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, moving on to public comment. This is the time set aside for members of the public to address the board on items that are not on the agenda, but that are within the board's subject matter jurisdiction. Please note that we can't make any comment or take any official action on these conversations in this section because they're not part of the agenda. Mr. Secretary, do we have any persons who would like to speak in the public comment section?
Not at this time.
Okay, very good. Then we're closing public comment. And we will move on to item number 10, which are the jurisdictional items. I have 10A, which is an exemption owner occupancy, number 1, case number 23850, 2416 3rd Street. May we have a staff report, please? Oh, I see Commissioner Trosis. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would just ask my fellow commissioners if they would entertain a motion to waive the staff report and approve, unfortunately, just due to the legal nature of the, and the fact that they've met the thresholds of the owner occupancy exemption. For items 10A1 and 10A2, would anyone be interested in that? Would that be something that, okay, so I will move, sorry, Mr. Morza, I will move to waive the staff reports on 10A1 and 2 and adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law on both of those.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Foster. Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Trosis.
Yes.
Commissioner Sultan. Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
And Chair Durrant.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving right along to item number 11, public hearings. The first one is 11A, which is consideration of whether to establish a ceiling on the 2022 general adjustment. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. At its last meeting, per the charter, the board announced what the annual general adjustment will be for this year. At this time, per the charter, the board now has the discretion whether to impose a ceiling, a dollar amount ceiling on that general adjustment. That is also governed by formula in the charter. And so with the general adjustment of 6% and the formula applied per the charter, the ceiling would be a dollar amount of 140, and the board may discuss and determine at its discretion whether they want to impose that ceiling. Staff has provided resolutions both with the ceiling and without a ceiling for your convenience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Council. There are two members of the public that would like to speak on this subject. Before I get to them, do any commissioners have any questions for staff before I go to the public questions or comments? Yes, Vice Chair Foster.
Yes, I would like to ask staff to clarify for the record, when is the last time we did not impose this ceiling? It's been pretty consistent year after year after year, and I just wanted to know if staff knows how many years we've been imposing the ceiling, and not only this board, but boards before us.
I don't have it right at my fingertips, but I will pull it up and I'll be able to answer that question for you after we hear from the public.
Would you say that it's largely been consistent?
It's been quite consistent that the board has applied the ceiling.
Thank you. That's all. I appreciate it.
And
okay.
Can I just ask another question? If we want,
yes, of course.
Is there any, can our general counsel just let us know if there's any legal authority to impose a lower ceiling or a lower percentage increase than what was calculated in what we set forward for public hearing?
No, at this time, the board does not have the authority to deviate from the formulas that are specifically set out in the charter, and the board must follow the charter's dictates.
Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, then we'll go to the public comments. The first speaker I have is Danielle Charney, who has requested 5 minutes. Mr. Secretary, if you can assist with getting Ms. Charney set up and ready to speak.
Yes. Ms. Charney, you will have 5 minutes to address the board on this item. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, don't worry, I won't make anyone suffer for 5 minutes. What I have to say is pretty simple, and that is if there is no way to circumvent this for the lower income people for whom it might be just so really hard, is there some possibility that the city might step up with a subsidy for the very low income seniors who really are not able to absorb it? And that's pretty much it. That's my only question. And thank you for your work.
Thank you, Ms. Charney. Okay, then we will move on to the next speaker, which is Sonia Fox Sultan. And Mr. Secretary, I have a question for Ms. Sultan when she is ready to speak before she starts.
Okay, I've actually just received communication from Ms. Sultan that she will be joining us. However, she is not yet in the queue. Ms. Sultan, if you could please use the phone number on the agenda. That's area code 408-740-7256 and meeting ID number 671-860-763, followed by participant passcode 7728. We will get you set up to speak.
Okay, and as you did that, Mr. Secretary, you reminded me that I was supposed to do that. So I am sorry that I didn't do that, but thanks for covering me on that. What shall we do now? We can wait?
We could go into discussion, Mr. Chair. We could go into discussion and entertain her comment when she gets online.
Does that sound good to everybody else?
Is that the only other comment?
That's the only other person that I know of. Well, let me ask this question, Mr. Secretary. Are there any other people who have joined to speak on this item other than the two that I mentioned?
Yes, actually, we do have two requests that have just come in. One from Erica and also one from Danielle Leitner-Peretz. Erica and Danielle, if you could respond with which item number you would like to speak on, we can go ahead and get you set up.
Okay, well, go ahead and find that out, Mr. Secretary, and we'll see if they want to talk on this item.
Okay, I've just received a message regarding Ms. Sultan. She would not like to speak on this item. She would like to speak on a later item and will be joining us later. We do have Danielle that will be joining us to speak on this item. Danielle, you will have 5 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted, or you have been sent the invitation to join as a speaker. Please go ahead.
Ms. Leitner-Perez, are you there?
Ms. Peretz, you have been sent the invitation to join as a speaker. Please accept the invitation through the chat function in BlueJeans, and you will be able to address the board for 5 minutes.
And do you know, Mr. Secretary, while she's getting that set up, the person you mentioned whose name is Erica, do you know if she wanted to speak on this item or was it a different one?
I've received confirmation from Erica as well that she would like to speak on this item. Erica, you've been sent the same invitation to join through BlueJeans. Please accept, and you will be able to address the board for 5 minutes. If either of you are having trouble using the BlueJeans chat function, please join using the telephone number on the agenda. That number again, I'm going to read out loud. So if you can jot this down, it is area code 408-740-7256 with meeting ID 671-860-763. 763 and participant passcode 7728. I see Erica has now joined us. Erica, you have been unmuted. You'll have 5 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, Rent Control board members. I just need to address you guys as far as the 6% rate increase. With the cost of inflation driving many of your community members down from moderate income to low income, is there any way that we can petition the city council to correct this? We need help. This is a desperate plea just from the community here at large. Is there anything that we can do? Should we write letters? What is it that we can do to help stop this 6% rent increase? I don't know if you can answer me when I'm asking this question. My apologies.
I would just say that, sorry, we're not really supposed to respond to public comment, but I do believe that we might address some of your concerns later in the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Erica, thank you very much for your comments. Do we have the other speaker, Danielle Leidner-Perez, ready to speak, Mr. Secretary?
No, it looks like Danielle has left the event. Hopefully she is trying to join us by phone, but we do have Micah Baumgardner that would like to speak on this item. Micah, you will have 5 minutes to address the board. Please, you've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I would like to say pretty much the same thing that the last person said. I think a 6% increase would be just like extremely detrimental to me and my neighbors and everyone else who is a tenant. I think that there should be a limit, and I guess you don't have the ability to decrease the limit, but I wish that you would fight harder to decrease the limit, because it is just like really difficult to afford housing in general here in Santa Monica. You know, it's like even affordable housing, quote unquote, is still like $1,500, $1,600. That's not affordable. And with these increases happening at a time where we're having unprecedented inflation, it's just like, it's really difficult for people to get jobs. You know, I think it's just unreasonable for that to happen. I'm sorry. I don't really know that much about politics. I think it's extremely hard to find information about this. I think it's extremely hard. It was even really hard for me to find out about this meeting, to find the agenda, all this stuff. I wish there was more transparency. I wish that, more could be done to help the tenants who are struggling financially. And in general, I believe, the owners of buildings, in my opinion, aren't really struggling in the same way that tenants are. I think it is unfair to tenants that we have to worry that we could lose a roof over our heads because we're outpriced by it. And I would really ask you to take that into consideration when you're voting on this and when you're considering this. This is literally like a life or death situation for a lot of people. Like a few $100, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot to a lot of people. Lots of people depend on this sort of stuff, and they don't even know that meetings like this are happening. So, that's my piece.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Really appreciate
I've got a
hearing
question
that.
for the caller.
Okay. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
The caller still with us?
It looks like...
Oh, yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. So, and we appreciate you joining. We're very grateful for all of the public comment we've received, both here at the meeting and dozens and dozens of letters we've received in the last few days, including today. I just wanted to make sure, were you aware that last meeting we did establish a subcommittee of this board to study the issue and study the legalities and to work with council on subcommittees with them? I just wanted to make sure, were you aware that we have been studying what remedies we might be able to come up with?
I wasn't aware of that. I think it's great that that was established. I wonder how much research will really lead to change. And I'm also wondering, how would I have learned about this if I didn't go to that meeting?
So, Tracy, can you perhaps just remind the public all the different ways in which our meetings are publicly noticed?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, we notice them on our website. We publicize in the Santa Monica Daily Press that we're holding public hearings, so this was noticed in the Daily Press. We also have a mailing list, or both a paper mailing list and an email mailing list that people can sign up for, and we will send our agendas to them directly and any other communications. So if somebody's interested in doing that, they could email us at rent control. I'm not sure what the mailbox is right now, but I'll get that. Or they can speak with Mr. Ho, and he will sign them up for both the email list and the paper mail.
It's rentcontrol@santamonica.gov. And I too, to our friendly caller, I assigned myself up for the email listserv because I like to get the emails too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I think also, I guess, like, a point that I would like you to consider is I feel like to be an engaged citizen, to be emailing these emails, to be being on these newsletters, keeping up with all of that, that is a lot of time and effort and mental energy to, you know, put into something. I know this is your job, so it's like this is what you see every day. You're so used to it, but, you know, it's like from a tenant perspective, it's like I'm a pretty engaged person. And I am still confused about this, and I'm still learning about it. And I would like you to consider all of the people that don't have a voice at these meetings, and all of the people who are really struggling and don't have that, like, time, mental capacity to be a more engaged citizen. You know, like, there are a lot of people struggling out here. This is a really serious thing that affects a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, I'd like to, you know, for the caller, I would love to hear your ideas for how to reach these folks. I think it is important to get this information out to people where they are. But yeah, I would personally, Naomi, I would, you know, if you want to email me at the rent board and offer your kind of suggestions for what sort of outreach we could be adding to the outreach that we engage in already to reach the folks that you're describing, I think that would be really helpful.
Allison's going to tell us. I don't think we're allowed to talk about this, you guys.
I just want to caution the board.
We can do clarifying questions. Very long.
That are not on the agenda. We can take the comments as they relate to the specific item and ask questions related to the item. We need to accept the comment and then move on to the next speaker. Thank you.
This is in relation to the agenda item. I just want to ask the caller if when they moved in, did they receive the information sheet that talked about this part of the charter and this timeliness of the meeting that we do every June? Because landlords are required by law to give every new tenant and every existing tenant the information sheet from the rent board that contains some of this information about this item, about the cap.
I have like all of my documents from when I first moved into my apartment. I moved in like, I want to say last September, and I am 100% sure I did not receive any information about the board meetings, nothing like that. No, I didn't get that.
Okay. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you very much. Moving on, are there any other public speakers, any members of the public who would like to speak on item 11A?
Yes, we now have Danielle Leitner-Peretz that has joined us. Ms. Peretz, you will have 5 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me?
If you could speak a little louder, that would be helpful.
Okay, hopefully this, right. Is that better?
That's better, yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. My name is Danielle Leitner-Peretz, and I am with the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. I submitted a letter to the commission earlier this week, comprehensively discussing 3 of the agendized items, 11A, C, and D. And if at all possible, I'd like to just, since they're somewhat related, just speak to all of them now and not repeat my comments. Basically, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just for the record, it would be more clear if we could just handle these as we go down the list.
Okay.
I'm just trying to make a clear record, and without hearing the staff report on the other items, it might be a little confusing as to what topics we're talking about at any given moment. So if I can ask that you just speak about 11A right now, and then if you will indulge us and come back when the other items come up, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, that's, I understand. I will do so. Like I said, I submitted a comprehensive letter on behalf of the association, so it elaborates on all of the issues. Small business housing providers have been really struggling over these last 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the government mandates that have been put in place. They have been subject to enormous increases in operational and building costs, all of which are rapidly escalating as we are in an ever-increasing inflationary period with current inflation at 8% or higher. The current general adjustment of 6% does not begin to meet this ever-increasing inflationary cost. And for the board now to be contemplating a ceiling for that 6%, which would effectively only apply to the city's high-income renters, essentially at the expense of struggling small mom-and-pop owners, is of serious concern. And we are therefore strongly opposed to this ceiling. And I would actually encourage the board to look at what the city of Beverly Hills is considering. They are looking towards developing a rent subsidy for low-income individuals in their city who are going to need assistance due to rent increases. And I think that is a more equitable solution that will help individuals in need. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Leitner-Perez. Are there any other speakers wishing to speak on this item 11A, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, we do have 2 callers that have dialed in. Caller with phone number ending 6166. Please state your name and you will have 5 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Whit. I believe you all received an email from me. I really empathize with what the landlord just said about, high income renters getting a break, right? Like, whereas if the full, effectively what happens if 6% is adopted and then a ceiling is imposed is that those who are just a little bit above what would make them immune to the 6% increase end up paying the full 6% increase, and the highest income individuals paying the most rent feel next to no effect because they enjoy the ceiling. And I just, it makes no sense to me in terms of this being an equitable solution and the true reality of the burden of $140 a month well, like $1,700 a year, being really arduous, really onerous for the people, right, as another caller said, who were middle income and are now low income as a result of all the inflation and not enjoying pay increases. So it seems to me, I know I've heard, like, oh, it's in the charter, which, I mean, it's disappointing to me that we saw inflation going up, and if the charter needed to be addressed in September or whenever, that there wasn't some red flag raised then and going, this is going to be an issue come March if the trend continues. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that you will find a creative solution, and that's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Secretary, any other speakers?
Yes, we have Arthur joining us. Arthur, you will have 5 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay. I see some nodding heads. Hi, everybody. This is my first rent control board meeting, and just jumping in. And I just have one basic question, and because I see both sides of this. When I first moved to Santa Monica, I was in a rent control apartment, and it was key. I just graduated school. I was working as a waiter, and it really allowed me to live in Santa Monica until I started my career. So I'm very sympathetic, and I was very close to the bone, when I was working to start my career. But I guess my question is, and it pertains to the last two comments, is do you have any idea what percentage are small mom and pop owners that are certainly feeling the effects of inflation, same as the tenants are? I mean, they're at that 8%, and I know I don't own any buildings. I have a condo, but I'm not a landlord. But I know that everything has gone up. I'm the HOA president, and just in terms of every aspect from maintenance to water to everything has gone up for the landlords. So I guess my question is, trying to be a little bit fair to both sides here, is do you have any idea what percentage of Santa Monica landlords are actually these struggling mom and pop shops? And if so, is there a way to release that information? I don't expect you to have it right on your fingertips right now, but that would just be an interesting piece of information.
Thank you very much for your comments. We can't, this isn't a question and answer type of situation, okay, so you can leave your comments. Then. Yeah, and we'll take it rhetorically, and we can get you an answer. Commissioner Trosas, do you want to add in?
I would just direct you to my social media, Arthur. I actually just posted about this yesterday. In fact, there's a link to the annual report, and there's a lot of really good information in the annual report. Right. Tracy, our executive director, might be able to. I mean, we could break down potentially, depending on who's registering their units, like how many units are registered in Santa Monica. Right. We're not going to have perfect data. I know we're not in a question and answer session, but there is an annual report out there.
Great. And are you on? Is that on Twitter or Insta, Facebook?
It's on. I guess I'm old. It's on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, but Anastasia looks like she wants to say something too. I would love to have a discussion session with anyone who wants to email me. I'm happy to talk about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'll let staff handle it. I have lots of thoughts on that, but I will let staff handle it.
All right. Thank you. Do you have any other comments?
No, that's it. Thanks so much. Thanks, Caroline, for directing me to your Facebook.
No, thanks for coming, and just for everyone who, I know that it's hard to engage in, and just like the previous caller said, engaging is hard, but I really appreciate that you all are taking the time to come and engage with us. I really appreciate it.
I had to tear myself away from the hearings in Washington.
Accurate. Mm-hmm.
But here we are. This is a little closer to home right now. So Thanks for your response.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Secretary, do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak?
Yes, we have Parker that just joined us. Parker, you will have 5 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Beautiful, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Go right ahead, Parker.
First and foremost, I'd like to say, thank you for being here. I have interacted with the rent control board previously. A woman named Rose helped me out with my lease, and you guys were absolutely amazing. So I have a really good esteem for this board and the work you guys do here in Santa Monica to help protect us renters. I'm a local renter here, and in terms of what I'd just like to comment on is, for me, and especially my observations and my discussions of other people here, both local landlords and fellow renters, is that it seems to be a discussion between profit margin and groceries. For some people, these mom and pop people, right? They're running a business. I work in the mortgage industry as a mortgage loan originator. I've seen their tax returns. I know what's tax deductible. I know what they're paying taxes on and what they're not, and the protections they have in place. And I know other people who are on disability who are worried about feeding themselves, feeding their partners and their children. And I think that's just really something I want to bring to a head or to a point here and make sure that that's being something we spent time discussing, because I know a lot of people on here tend to be on the older side, and I'm, in my early 20s. And if there's anything we can vote on in terms of the increase or in terms of what I could influence or comment on, is to keep in mind the people who this will affect. And I think by protecting us even further, we can take the money we would spend on giving to these landlords, right? And use that for the local economy, use that to spend our money buying groceries, food, gas, help make this a safer and more equitable neighborhood instead of continuing to just funnel money towards rent, which is obviously the highest expense in Santa Monica, as per the report, as Caroline mentioned. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Parker. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Ho, do we have any other speakers for this item?
No, that was our final speaker.
Okay. Then we'll move on to discussion. Do I have any commissioners who would like to discuss this item?
I'm happy to start if you want me to.
Okay. Commissioner Francis, go right ahead.
So obviously it's no surprise, every single year that I've been on the rent control board, I've always voted to impose the cap. That is definitely going to be the way that I will vote tonight. But it's really hard for me to even vote at all, because I feel like this is not just and not what we were elected to do. 6% is not acceptable to me. $140 is not acceptable to me. That is way too high. I've heard everyone here. I also hear the landlords that talk about what has been getting more expensive. But to that I say, I don't know anyone who's gotten a de facto 6% raise in their salary this year just because of inflation. That's a very, very high amount. And effectively, we would be giving everyone a 6% raise de facto. And that also compounds the rapidity with which our rents increase in this city. If we are to give a 6% increase this year, that doesn't just affect rent controlled housing stock. We have the entire staff report around, not staff report, I should say, what I mentioned earlier, the annual report around the rapidity with which rents have increased before Costa-Hawkins and after. And I really am just very concerned about the long-term effects that imposing even a 6% increase would have. So with that being said, I mean, I think we've made it clear at the beginning that we don't have, and Anastasia, sorry, I'll wrap up. We don't have the authority, legally speaking, in our charter, because we actually, as voters back in the city, voted to put forward this formula approach. And we could not change the formula or impose a different ceiling absent a change of our charter. But as you might remember, Anastasia and I have been on the subcommittee looking at options here. And, I think this is an inflection point for our city. And quite frankly, it's city council. I know that there are folks on the call, like many callers, who said, why can't we do something? This just doesn't seem right. And we would agree, which is why, given the state of emergency that we're still in, that the governor has still had imposed and declared and is still in place. Given the extenuating circumstances, there could be. I think I defer to City Council to come back to us with options, but we feel good that I feel good from a legal standpoint. I'll just speak for myself that there are options that the City Council needs to put in place to save us now. Because even if we were to put some sort of change or ballot initiative going forward, that is not going to apply retroactively to this 6%. I don't think we're going to be able to write it in a way that would apply retroactively to the 6% increase that's going to happen this year before an election were to take place. So at this point, it's really, I've been doing all the behind the scenes pushing that I can do and will continue to do to make sure that City Council steps up and does something that's right for our city and right for everyone who lives here, because I do not want to live in a place that is economically exclusionary and does not allow folks to age in place and be here and contribute to the community with dignity. So I will be voting to impose the cap, but I am not satisfied with that, and will be continually urging City Council to move forward with action immediately. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Foster, go right ahead.
I want to try to be brief. My heart was broken when I heard what the figure was. And the mail that we've received very recently is very alarming to me in many ways. And what I mean by that is I feel awful that people don't know more about the rent control law. Both the people who are in the business of administering buildings and and the tenants who live in the buildings. I implore people to reach out to our agency. That's what your registration fee is for. Our agency has info codes that will answer any questions you have about your apartment as best they can, 5 days a week, every week. But one of the biggest things I saw in the correspondence, in the dozens and dozens of letters we received, was why didn't we do something sooner? Why didn't we see this coming? And by charter, and people might not be aware of this, it's March to March. So the calculation period is March to March. So March of 21 to March of 22. So when the news starts in September or October of last year, it's already too late by charter for us to do anything at the rent board to alter the numbers that you see in front of you. And quite frankly, a month or two before the news began talking about possible inflation, we had just had this exact same meeting in June of last year, approving a very modest single digit, I believe it was 1.7% with a $39 cap rent increase. And we heard from almost no one. Maybe just a couple of constituents did reach out saying that even that was a lot during a crisis. But we didn't hear a lot from the public. And our agency reached out proactively through campaign after campaign throughout the last 2 years, looking for affected landlords, looking for affected tenants, doing our very best outreach to reach people. And we know it's hard. We know that most people don't want to do the research or have thought to do the research into the rent control charter. But boy, it is a blanket that gets thrown over a community that's meant to be a moderating force on speculative real estate in a hot, hot place to live. And the community is the one who placed that blanket there in 1979. We have continued over the years to make common sense changes as trends changed and as the economies have changed. Things like Costa-Hawkins, things like the Ellis Act have greatly affected the affordability of even our rent-controlled housing stock. And so the reason I'm going to be voting yes for the ceiling tonight is because if you look at where the number is in the calculation by charter and it's at $2,340, you can't even rent a two-bedroom apartment for the last 8 to 10 years for that average in this city. So any family that moved in here, or any set of partners or roommates or adoptive families of any kind who moved in here in the last 6, 8, 10, 12 years, rents have been record high in vacancy decontrolled units. This is not meant to protect rich people living in $10,000 a month apartments. That's a really small percentage of our units. And I hope people realize that talking points regarding this protects rich people is far too, in my estimation, is far too broad of a generalization to put out. We have not a single 3-bedroom in this town is affordable at that rate. And so the rapidity that Commissioner Tarosis mentioned is what this part of the measure is concerned with. The rapidity of compounding of already nationwide record high market rates. For anyone trying to make a lateral move in Santa Monica from one apartment to another or come into this community and stay a part of this community for a long time, the cap is designed to moderate rapidity, the rapidness with which rates grow and compound. And as she stated, I don't need to repeat it, we are sickened by this temporary inflation that's not based on the entire economy rising. It's based on fuel and food, which is different than any other year we've ever dealt with. Stagflation is completely different than inflation, but we're not in economics class. So I will suffice to say, ditto everything Commissioner Tarosis said. We are lobbying hard for the rest of the city, city staff and city officials to come up with common sense solutions that make sense to protect our renters as much as we can in a very odd circumstance that is unprecedented since 1990. And no, we couldn't have seen it coming in time to stop it. We wish we would have, we wish we could have. If we had, we would. We could not. And that upsets me greatly. And I know it upsets everyone else in the landlord and tenant community who want to see this community stay together. And I will also be voting yes on that.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Sultan, anything to add or comment on?
I would just like to say I agree with Commissioner Foster's comments, Mr. Tarosis' comments. I was really distressed to learn that the increase was going to be 6%, that the cap was going to be $140. You know, one of our callers mentioned, you know, folks living on disability, and I work as a legal aid attorney. A lot of my clients are very low income, living on, you know, $1,000 a month, and just, you know, to imagine a 6% increase for somebody like that, it's just, you know, really could push them into homelessness. And, you know, also as Commissioner Foster mentioned, the $140 cap applies at around $2,300, which, you know, a lot of 1-bedrooms, you know, in that are, you know, have been controlled, maybe at $2,300. These are not like rich people renting, you know, these are like middle class people, right? Or even lower middle. I mean, these are not, you know, wealthy folks. So I just think it's like a fallacy to suggest that this cap that I very much think we should impose is going to somehow disproportionately benefit the wealthy. I think it's really important that we do what we can, right? Because we are very much bound, you know, by the charter to impose this 6% rent increase, but we do have the option to impose this $140 cap, which is, you know, really the only thing we can do at this juncture besides ask City Council to propose changes to the charter. So this hopefully doesn't happen again. There are, you know, for folks that are concerned about seniors, folks with disabilities, you know, there are different programs to help prevent homelessness. You know, Santa Monica, we have our POD program, and there's also, you know, other programs countywide that I hope folks will, you know, take advantage of if they're in that situation where they're on a fixed income and facing an unaffordable increase. And I'm sure, you know, the rent board could provide, you know, referrals to those types of programs. But yes, I will very much be supporting this cap. It's the least I can do.
Okay, thank you. And the only comment that I would like to add, I think everyone made very good comments, and I think that we all sense the frustration, the fear, the concern from those who spoke and from the letters that we received on both sides of the fence. The thing that I go back to is a point, I believe Vice Chair Foster mentioned it, maybe it was Ms. Condon, I'm sure we all have at one point or other, is that, you know, we're living, I think what's forgotten is that we live in a premium place where rents are high, historically high. And I think that it gets lost when you see a 6% increase, it gets lost in how well landlords are doing here. And with that 6%, you know, it does hurt those people who are struggling to make ends meet a great deal. And there are people that end up not being able to afford where they live. And it affects the type of people that can live here. People who can't afford to raise a family here end up having to leave. And so, you know, this is the Rent Control Board, and we're here to try and control rent so that we can, you know, mitigate people not being able to plant roots here. And at the same time, we are duty bound to give a fair rate of return to the owners and landlords. And I think Costa Hawkins and those Ellis has afforded that kind of opportunity. But you know, we're here to control rent as that's what our charter tells us to do. And our charter also restricts what we can do. We are required to provide the 6%, but it does allow us the discretion to help where we can. And I think that all the commissioners have made very good points in doing what we can by putting the cap. And I believe that, you know, that is how I would vote on this as well. So with that in mind, I'll entertain a motion from any commissioner. They would like to make one.
So I move that we adopt alternative 2 in the staff report, resolution 22-001, announcing the 6% general adjustment and imposing a $140 ceiling.
Okay. There's a motion. Is anybody willing to second?
Second.
Okay. Second by Vice Chair Foster. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Teroses.
Yes.
Commissioner Sultan.
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
Chair Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Moving on to item 11B, just consideration and adoption of the Rent Control Board fiscal year 22-23 operating budget. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening again. Tonight, the board's holding a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 22-23 budget before adopting it. The board reviewed the budget and agency goals on May 12th and supported staff's recommendations. Because we covered the budget in detail last month and it's been available on the board's website since May, and we have no requests from the public to speak on this item tonight, I'll provide just a brief summary. For the upcoming year, we are projecting expenditures of $5,807,000 and revenue of $6,108,000, resulting in a projected surplus of approximately $300,000. The additional funds will help replenish the board's reserve account, which will be reduced by approximately $220,000 in the current fiscal year. For the first time in 5 years, staff is recommending an increase in the registration fee. Since 2017, the registration fee has been $198 per unit. This year, we are recommending an annual fee of $228 per unit. Historically, the board has increased the registration fee when the reserve fund is not sufficient to retain the city's recommended operating contingency of 15% of the year's anticipated operating expenditures, plus funds to cover earned vacation and sick time benefits for board employees. If there is no increase in the registration fee, the deficit for fiscal year 22-23 would exceed $500,000, leaving the reserves more than $560,000 below the required minimum at year end, which would not be fiscally responsible and would be a departure from the board's usual practice. Owners who pay the fees in full by August 1st may pass through half of the fee, or $9.50 per month, to the tenants. The budget maintains the current operations of the agency and ensures the provision of the highest level of public service in our day-to-day operations. It also provides a small cushion to address costs associated with new initiatives and projects and retirements of longtime employees that may occur in the coming fiscal year. As in the current year, the next year's budget contains both operating expenses and a couple of additional expenditures. The additional costs include funds for final sign-off on TruePoint Solutions implementation of the new property and rent tracking system, and a sixth payment on the loan that the board received from the city in 2017 to accelerate paying down the agency's unfunded pension liability. The board previously approved the expenditures for the capital improvement project and the 10-year repayment plan for the PERS loan. The budget document itself has, as I said, been on the agency's website since May, and the May study session provided detailed review of the budget. A cover memo with the document highlights several specific line items that the board reviewed in detail during the study session. So unless the board would like me to review any of the specific expenditures or review the agency goals, that concludes my staff report. If the board has any questions, Ms. Noseworthy and I are happy to answer them. And as always, I want to thank Ms. Noseworthy for her hard work and attention to detail in preparing and monitoring the budget. And that concludes my staff report.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Did you mention, I heard you say that there was no speakers. Is that true for this item?
There weren't when we started, but let's ask Mr. Ho if there are any speakers now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ho?
Yes, that's correct. We do not have any speakers on this item.
All right, great. Thank you. Any commissioners have any comments or questions regarding the staff report? Nope, seeing none. Oh, okay. Vice Chair Foster?
Just a brief question. A couple of people who wrote letters to us today made reference to something about the city manager commenting on our budget. I believe we just need to clarify for the public that our budget is fully and totally, completely separate from the city's, and is funded 100% by a 50-50 share of landlords and tenants paying a registration fee. And we are not in any way reflective of any of the fiscal policies that go on over at the city. We pay rent at City Hall. So I, for one, am always in awe, in total awe, of staff being able to nail this so closely and stay on budget every year. But Tracy, is there anything wrong with what I just said? Sorry.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that there just might have been a misunderstanding. If people looked at the memo that I had written as the executive director, somehow they might have thought that the city manager was making those comments. But you're correct. We do not take any money from the city's general fund. The whole operations of the agency are funded by this annual registration fee.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Any other comments, commissioners? Seeing none. Okay. And since there's no persons who would like to speak from the public, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the proposed annual operating budget for fiscal year 22. Okay. Second by Commissioner Trosas. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Sultan,
Yes.
Commissioner Roses,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster,
Yes.
Chair Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you all very much for the hard work on getting that done. Appreciate it. Moving on to item 11C, consideration of whether to amend subsection B of regulation 11200 respecting an increase in the annual registration fee. Can we get a staff report, please?
Yes, I will give the staff report as well. So the board has approved the budget based upon a $228 per unit annual registration fee. So now we are asking you to update the regulation. Regulation 11200B specifies the annual fee, and this year it will need to be updated from $198 to $228. So that is the essence of this item, and I believe you do have some requests to speak on this.
Okay, any questions on the staff report by the commissioners before we go to public comment? Seeing none, Mr. Ho, do we have any speakers who wish to speak on this item, 11C?
Yes, we currently have Danielle Leidner-Peretz. Ms. Peretz, please accept the request to interact live, and you will have 2 minutes to address the board. I just wanted to also remind callers that the meeting passcode for this item would be 7728. So if you wish to speak on this item, please use that passcode. Ms. Peretz, you will have 2 minutes to address the board on this item. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I am not sure if it is at this point a moot point, but the rent registration fee that is in the budget that is, I guess, been approved is a over 15% increase to the fee. And that is now on, owners to find a way to budget for all the increases that they are encountering on top of the ceiling that was just approved.
Ms. Leidner-Perez, I think we lost you. Or were you done with your comment? Ms. Leidner-Perez, are you still with us? Looks like she's attempting to speak, but I don't see her. Mr. Ho, can you assist? I'm just not sure if she's done with her comments or if she still wants to make more comments.
Ms. Peretz, you are unmuted. Do you wish to continue your comments, or have you finished? Ms. Peretz, it appears that you are unmuted. However, you're having connection issues. If you would like to continue your comment, please let us know as soon as possible, either by requesting a new request to interact with us, or by dialing in the meeting ID number, or I'm sorry, the telephone number found on the agenda, the meeting ID, and the passcode.
In the meantime, Mr. Ho, are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item, 11C? Hello, can people hear me? There we go.
Apologies.
No worries, Ms. Leidner-Peretz. Go ahead and finish your comments.
Thank you. I apologize for the technical issues I've been experiencing. As I was saying, this increase in the fee is quite significant considering that it is over 15%. And at the same time, the board has decided to institute a ceiling which caps the amount of the
I think we lost her again.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, her allotted time was up. Would you like to allow her to continue?
I'd like her to finish her comment if she would.
Ms. Peretz, you have been unmuted. Please finish your thoughts.
Thank you. So essentially, I just would really urge the board to reevaluate the budget and reassess the possibility of instituting a reduction for the rent registration fee at a time when everyone is still struggling financially. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Leibman-Perez. Mr. Ho, are there any other speakers wishing to speak on 11C?
No, there are no other speakers.
Okay, very good. Then we'll close the public comment section and we're open for discussion. Commissioners, anything anyone would like to say? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Vice Chair Foster, go ahead.
I'm going to ask either Dr. Condon or Ms. Noseworthy if they could give, if you can, if none of it's too difficult, a brief history of the percentages that we've raised the registration fee by, even if it's just approximate. And my point in saying and asking you that is, we only raise it every several years. So our agency is forced to live on a fixed income that lasts for several years. Workers in corporate workplaces, even our own property owners get increases year over year, cost of living increases, CPI increases. Various employees around the country and world get annual increases. We make do with what we've pledged to everyone for several years at a time and live within those means as long as we possibly can. And here we are at 5 years, making a small increase that does total 15%, but when taken over 15 years is more modest. Tracy, can you speak to that?
Yes, I can. The last time the board raised the registration fee, it went from $174.96 to $198. That was in 2017, and that was a 13% increase. And before that, the fee was last increased in 2013, and it went from $156 to $174.96, and that was a 12% increase. And then prior to that, in 2006, it went from 132 to 156, and that was an 18% increase.
Thank you for that clarification. So it's been fairly consistent, spread out, sporadic, and I feel like the agency has used restraint in going up to the cap that the charter allows. And also, Tracy, can you tell us in plain language what a tenant and landlord each per unit per month, what increase it is? It's $1 and change.
$1.25.
$1.25 per tenant and per landlord per unit. And it's not nothing. No one's saying it is. But to do the important work that this board does to protect the rent control charter and the housing in Santa Monica as best we can, that is what the charter prescribes. So I for one, will be supporting this this recommendation.
I have a question, Ms. Condon. Is the board limited on the how often it can amend subsection B regarding an increase? In other words, if we wanted to, could we do it every year?
Yes, you could do it every year if you wanted to.
Okay.
It's an annual fee, so once you've established it, it's for the year, but then you could change it the next year.
Okay, but what the record shows is that for the past, I think I heard you since 2006, so almost 20 years, there's only been 3 increases maybe that the board has, maybe 4 increases. Is that about right?
Yes, 3. This would be the 4th.
Okay, so this would be the 4th in about 20 years. At a pretty, and when you look at it, I think big picture, you pull back from the leaves and look at the forest. We've made 4 increases over 20 years, very modest rates. I don't, and at the same time, we could, if we wanted to, make it every year, but we try to be conservative. We try to stretch it out. And I think that having heard that evidence, yes, it's an increase of 15%, but it's consistent with our previous increases. There's only been 4 increases in the past 20 years. So I think the evidence shows we're doing our job at being as equitable as we can, and still enabling ourselves to maintain what we are required to do by the charter. So I will also be voting in favor of that. Any other comments by any other commissioners? No? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion. Anybody would like to make one? All right, not seeing none, I'll make a motion.
Right.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. The chair can move things. Go right ahead.
Very well. Then I will move that we amend Regulation 11-200 Subdivision B to increase the annual registration fee from $198 to $228. I have a second. Any seconds?
Naomi just raised her hand.
Okay, it froze on me. I didn't see that. Thank you, Commissioner Sultan. The first and the second. We'll take a roll call vote, please.
Yes, Commissioner Terosis.
Yes.
Commissioner Sultan.
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
And Chair Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 11D, consideration of whether to recommend to the City Council that the City place on the November 2022 ballot an amendment to the City Charter and Rent Control Amendment, allowing for a suspension of rent increases during certain declared emergencies. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening again, Commissioners. As we have been discussing over the course of this meeting, the board's authority is circumscribed by the charter, and currently the charter language does not allow any discretion on the part of the board to alter in any way the allowed general adjustment that must be announced by the board each year according to a formula. So this proposal, if put on the ballot by the City Council for a vote of the citizens of the City of Santa Monica, would provide the board with discretion to either suspend an otherwise allowed rent adjustment or modify that rent adjustment in response to a declared state of emergency and in order to preserve and protect the public's health and safety on the makings of some findings to that effect. As part of our current petition process, if an individual owner requires that increase in order to obtain a fair and reasonable return, they would be able to utilize the existing petition process to circumvent that rent freeze in order to secure for themselves a just and reasonable return through a rent increase. I do want to point out that this is not just a blank check. There are provisions in place that would require the board to make certain findings that a rent suspension or a rent freeze is necessary to protect the public's health and safety, and it could only be done during a declared state of emergency per this proposed amendment. So with that, I can answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have some members of the public who would like to speak, but before that, are there any questions regarding the staff report, commissioners? Seeing none, and I'll admit my video is kind of blotchy. It's kind of freezing on and off, so keep your hands up for a little bit until I see you, just in case it's frozen on me. I haven't seen any hands, so we'll go to public comments. Mr. Ho, I see the first person on my list is Bill Davids. He's requested 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, Mr. Davids, you will have 5 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I, first of all, have very deep concerns about the phraseology in terms of declared emergency. Most of the nearby rent-regulated jurisdictions that I'm aware of have much greater latitude, much greater leeway in terms of determining increases. I don't think any of the jurisdictions that I'm aware of has a phraseology covering declared emergency. Right now, we are going through tumultuous economic times, and I don't think there's been a declared emergency regarding tumultuous economic times right now. Therefore, I think what is being proposed falls very short of expectations of tenants, concerns of tenants, and actual tenant needs. This is a time, and I've been in Santa Monica, this is now my 32nd year here. We are going through an inflection point, not just an economic inflection point, but a sociological inflection point as well. I'm in an area in Northwest Santa Monica where there has been literally a deluge of young tech workers who've come into Santa Monica, and apparently, I'm not part of the tech industry, but apparently it's an amazing nomadic industry where people come and go from opportunity to opportunity, from city to city. And from what I'm observing and from conversations I've had with the young people who've moved into my general area, they have no plans really to stay in Santa Monica. And in fact, in many, many cases that I'm aware of, they haven't stayed long enough to see their very first increase. It's the very long-term tenants, and I am under the impression that there are about only 6,000 remaining long-term units under Santa Monica rent control jurisdiction that have long-term tenants. We are a dwindling percentage of the population, and I want to remind you that each time a very long-term tenant moves out, it's not simply a question of the apartment going to market rate. It's also a question of the enormous increase in property valuation that the property owners enjoy once a long-term tenant leaves. I am very apprehensive about the terminology declared emergency. If the governor doesn't declare it, if the mayor doesn't declare it, if the president of the United States doesn't declare it, we are up the proverbial creek. I think we need much better protection. We need to fortify the language that's going to be proposed as a ballot measure to cover economic troubled times as we've been going through. You've heard in previous testimony from people who've talked about the problems that are going to be imposed by the 6% increase, the burdens that are going to be imposed by the 6% increase. But if we are going to go forward, we need to have much more malleability in terms of the way increases are imposed. And again, declared emergency makes me, and I'm sure many other tenants, apprehensive, because how many times in one lifetime will there be a declared emergency? How many times in a long-term tenant's existence in Santa Monica are there going to be declared emergencies? So I would appreciate your rethinking the language that you've introduced. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Davids. I see next on the list, Phyllis Dudick. You'll have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Yes, Ms. Dudick, you have been unmuted. You will have 5 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank you for all the work you do on behalf of renters and tell you that I'm looking at, somehow I got off my screen, I'm looking at Christmas wreaths, so it's kind of strange to be talking to you while I'm looking at Christmas wreaths. But anyway, I've appeared at a few of the meetings recently to discuss the problematic tie embedded in the charter with regard to the automatic kick-in of a 6% general adjustment increase when inflation hits 8%. And the board having absolutely no authority, no opportunity to discuss, confer, or ability to modify this general adjustment in any way, depending on whatever the circumstances. So without the ability to expand the conditions under which the board could discuss and possibly, come to some compromises, or just plain cutting the tie between 6% and 8%, I just don't think we're really addressing the problem. The current amendment, as I read it, does not really address this bare bones problem, which could reoccur. It could reoccur next year, and we'd be sitting here discussing the same thing, jeopardizing people's housing security for many renters. And at the same time, I'm not suggesting we never go to 6%. The point is the flexibility. I totally agree with Bill David on this. Certain emergency situations, that's great. State of emergencies, that's great. Health crisis, like maybe we'll have another pandemic next year and inflation will be 8%, then you'll be able to talk about it. This is the problem. So all this other stuff, as far as I'm concerned, this is the problem. And if you are not able to word this in a way where you have more flexibility for discussion, or you can't cut the tie, maybe the council can do that. I don't know. The thing is, this is not just about this year. This is about the future. The situation in which we find ourselves should alert us to the fact that we do not have a crystal ball about what's going to happen or when or how or whatever. And if this tie-in stays the way it is without any ability for you to do anything, then maybe after, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's going to be next year? There's wars, there's this, who knows? So this is a red flag. This is an opportunity to think out of the box and to think about the future, an unknown future. To think, not just to think about this year. There's nothing we can do about this year, but maybe we can do something about the future if we look at the problem, which is embedded in the charter. That is what needs to be somehow changed, or the ability to discuss beyond these limited certain emergencies and state of emergencies and all that, because it's a financial issue. And that's pretty much what I had. It's not too late to correct this for the future, and this is the opportunity. This is the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments, Ms. Dudick. I now have Elizabeth Lerer. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Ms. Lair, you have been unmuted. You'll have 5 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. First, I want to say that we definitely need a ballot measure to address the situation. But I want to be clear to everybody that's listening. Beware of ballot measures coming up in November. Ballot measures that increase taxes, no matter if they say they're going to help homelessness or the schools, and then also be aware of school bond taxes. All of these taxes come down to the tenants, so please be aware of that. Even the transfer tax put forward by the mayor. Be very clear that this will come down to tenants paying these things, okay? So yes, we need a ballot measure that will address situations that might not be a declared emergency, that will give the Rent Control Board the ability to deal with it. And I don't know how you guys are going to come up with this ballot measure, but you definitely need to have the tools to protect tenants when there is an unforeseeable situation. Because right now, I know that I am very disappointed that whether it's staff, elected officials, even Santa Monica renters' rights, these are the people charged with protecting our community. And they didn't. And now we have a baked-in 6% rent increase to our maximum allowed rents forever now. It's baked in now. They screwed up. Don't screw up again. Protect this community. I'm very worried about my neighbors that are going to be forced to leave because of this increase. So, and then I also want to say I was watching, or I turned on the YouTube channel, and you've mislabeled the hearing. The date says May 12th. I think people are going to be re-listening to this hearing. I want to make sure that it is labeled properly, June 9th, so that people can refer to this meeting and hear how you guys, and comments that were made, how you guys, discuss this and the comments that are made. So please label that. And if there's anything you can possibly do, because right now we just got to trust you can't do anything. Can't do anything. Well, I'm begging you, if anybody out there has any suggestions on what the Rent Control Board can do to help tenants with the 6% increase, please let us know. Let the board know. Let the staff know. Now, I'm not always confident that the staff will help people. I know that for the POD program, excellent program, incredibly difficult to get into. I've heard cases where staff has put off people from being able to apply for it. It's a great program, and there might be other programs to help very low income or seniors or disabled people, but people don't always have access to these things, even if they're eligible and really eligible. They're not always helps into getting into these programs. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, and beware of any ballot measures asking to raise taxes. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Deere. Appreciate your comments. Now we have Danielle Charney for 2 minutes.
Yes, Ms. Charney, you will have 2 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi. A lot of what the previous person, Bill David, said, I really agree with. and Elizabeth too, but I did not realize that our time went March to March. I don't think many of us did. So it couldn't happen except with someone that really understood economics, and I don't think that's around except Mark Verville, perhaps. One of the things that I think is important is how this is all worded and what can happen when it does kick in, which means, for instance, I have a friend whose brother has AIDS and is in his 60s, and he is going to have to move. He has a voucher, but he's right up to the top of the standard payment so that the increase will fall on him, and he lives on literally nothing, and he's very sick. So what I look for is a solution here, that what can help those that are really going to get hit hard, that honestly income qualifying, straight on the table, no BS, are going to be in trouble. Can some of these people be helped into a CCSM unit and have their rent locked? I think that, that's one way around the future of things that can get pretty rocky out here. The truly, truly vulnerable can really be helped by just, I think, some common sense things. So I'd love to be a part of this going forward. I don't know what I've got to offer, but I'd like to be. So thank you for all this, and I do think there are ways to help the people that are going to get hit hard. I hope that that's the next concentration on the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We now have Sonia Fox Sultan, who's requested 5 minutes to speak.
Ms. Sultan, you have been unmuted. You will have 5 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Oh, good evening. Yes, this is Sonia Sultan. I'm speaking tonight, right now, on behalf of Santa Monicans for Renters' Rights. SMERS supports doing whatever can be done to protect renters, particularly in periods of unusually high inflation, such as this one, in which there is very little correlation between major drivers of inflation, such as increased gas prices and food prices, and any actual out-of-pocket cost to landlords that should reasonably be considered in determining the annual adjustment. SMERS is open to potential solutions to protect renters, and we may bring additional ideas to the City Council as they are developed through our democratic process. And I personally would agree with the two of the earlier callers that talked about not limiting the flexibility provided under a proposed charter amendment to declared emergencies. And I would also like to caution against confusing the discussion about a proposed ballot measure to protect tenants, rent control tenants, with other potential ballot measures, such as the proposed transfer tax measure, which is actually designed to provide greatly increased funding for the POD program and other programs to protect tenants and prevent people from falling into homelessness. And I appreciate very much the work of the board, and I look forward to being a part of the process, and SMER wants to be part of the process for helping to develop, to consider options that could be approved by the City Council to go on the ballot to try to ensure that we're not in this difficult situation in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Sultan. I have Terrence Rutledge, who's requested 5 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Rutledge, you have been unmuted. You will have 5 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, so I want to tell the City Council to put an amendment, to put a ballot measure on the November ballot for the citizens of Santa Monica to vote on, to amend the city charter so that the Rent Control Board does have the authority to limit rent increases. And I want to echo what Bill David said, that we not limit it only to emergencies, because who knows how often that's going to happen, and that's just not strong enough to protect tenants. And you need to amend the city charter so that you do have the authority to protect tenants. And also not to put the priority on the wealthy property owners when they're struggling tenants who could lose their home, old people on fixed incomes and Social Security, tenants on Section 8 who will be thrown out. Some are old and sick. Where will they go? LA canceled their rent increase. Why won't Santa Monica? Why can't we have Santa Monica have the same authority? And over 6 of the buildings on the street I live on are owned by the same billionaire who owns 100 properties in LA. Some buildings here are owned by some of the richest men in the world, including one building 3 buildings over that's owned by Warren Buffett. These billionaires don't need rent increases. They don't need a fair right of return. They don't even need any rent. They're billionaires and corporations. IRS data says that 70% of large apartment buildings are owned by wealthy and corporations. Why are we prioritizing their profits over human needs and human rights to housing? That's my message. Put a proposal on the ballot to amend the charter so that the Rent Control Board has more to limit rent increases, not only under emergencies, but to protect tenants every year. Thank you. I yield my time.
Appreciate that. Thank you. That is all the speakers I have on my list. Mr. Ho, are there any others who have called in to speak on 11D?
Yes, we have 2 more requests to speak. First up is Micah Baumgardner. Micah, you will have 2 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Micah again. So yeah, thank you so much for taking this time, for letting me speak. Personally, I think it would only be logical for you to vote yes on this. Clearly, you have a problem with the rent increase ceiling. That's why you voted to maintain that. You all were saying that 6% is just way too high. I think that voting yes on this particular thing would give you a step in the right direction to get more power to change stuff like that. I agree with Terrence and what other people were saying. Clearly, I think this is a power that you should just have always in general. And I think that you should fight to have this power always in general and not just in a state of emergency. But that's what we're working with here. It seems like a really conservative measure to me anyway, because, it would open up a space for another public comment, and you're not even guaranteed that this is going to be on the ballot, right? You're just going to propose this to city council to have them put it on the ballot. So it seems like a very conservative measure to me. I think you should just vote yes. I think that this board deserves to have a lot more power. I think, it's a little misleading. It's the Rent Control Board, and you don't have the ability to control the board, to control the rent, right? The rent increase. That just doesn't make sense to me at all. So I think, you should fight to have more power to control the rent increases, and this is a step in the right direction. So, vote yes. That's what I think. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much, Micah Baumgardner. Are there any other, I think you said there was one more speaker, Mr. Ho?
Yes. We have Danielle Leitner-Peretz joining us again. Ms. Leitner-Peretz, you will have 1 minute to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
The association is opposed to the proposed ballot measure. The COVID-19 pandemic was an unprecedented event, and it resulted in government response that was reflective of that unprecedented event. The proposed ballot measure far exceeds the emergency powers that localities had exercised during the pandemic by providing the board sole discretion to eliminate rent increases during any state of emergency, regardless of a direct impact to Santa Monica residents. And for that, we are opposed. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Leitner-Peretz. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Ho, any other speakers who've requested to speak on 11D?
No, that was our final speaker.
Okay, very good. Then we'll close public comment and we'll move to discussion. Any commissioners like to discuss this?
Yeah, I think we all do. But first, want to say thank you again. I know that it takes a lot of courage and time out of your night when you could be working, watching TV, playing with your kids, whatever the case may be, to sit here and call in and talk to us. So first of all, thank you. It's not unnoticed. And second of all, I think that most of us on this board, but I'll speak for myself again, would agree with a majority of the callers here. We are on this board to uphold the spirit of the rent control charter, and that is to ensure that folks are protected in their homes. And as we've explained for the last number of meetings, we're in this 6% situation because it's a complete anomaly and not something that we would have been able to predict. And so if you look at some of the examples that the callers brought up tonight, you hear like the city of LA did it, why can't we? And I just want to reflect on if everyone else is doing all these things, who's doing it? So again, that was the city council. And when these things are put in place, and as Oakland has recently done, Oakland has a rent control board, but they also imposed a cap. But who was that? It wasn't the rent control board, it was the city council. So I know that we're not here to do public comment to the public comment, but I just wanted to clarify that. I also want to say I agree. I think that we do a tremendous job here and should have more authority. But when rent control was initially passed, this was the compromise. I mean, we still do have an elected city council, and so again, I would, and I understand that folks are frustrated. They came here, they gave comment. I would encourage us to move this forward to city council as a potential ballot initiative. But again, like I mentioned in my previous comment on one of the previous items, this will only protect us on a going forward basis. It is not going to help us for this year. So that is why we still need council to act to impose a cap lower than 6% or $140, period. I feel strongly if other jurisdictions in California that are similarly situated are doing it, we can too. But again, city council would have to do that. In terms of Ms. Sultan's comment, Ms. Fox Sultan's comment that, and I think a couple others, that we remove the provision that it be a state of emergency as we move this forward to council. I'm fine with that. I think we have a prescription in the charter for the cap. We of course wouldn't ever be going above that cap, but I think that if there was a way to do it such that there was discretion for the board to go below the cap in urgent and emergent circumstances, I would be supportive of that. So those are my comments for the moment. Thanks.
Okay, I saw Vice Chair Foster, your hand up.
Yeah, it froze for just a moment at the end of Commissioner Terosis's comment. Can you just repeat quickly your last point you just made?
Sure. I would just say I agree with the callers who said that why should we tie it to the state of emergency, to have the authority to lower the cap, again, not increase the cap, but if in an emergent circumstance, the cap was set at a certain rate, and then we had the ability to potentially go below that cap in urgent circumstances, I would be supportive of that.
So are you urging us to potentially change language on the fly here and put in, because we'd have to make sure of the legality of only going one direction and not another direction if a different political front took on this board, for instance? Would it be so, okay, here's Allison. Allison, can you opine?
So I think we have to be cautious about using vague terms like urgent circumstances. One of the, I'm sorry, Commissioner Terosis, I don't mean to.
No, I know what you're going to say. We have to ensure a fair return, and there can't be a taking of. I mean, I think that. Sorry. Okay.
I'm more concerned about vagueness. We need to make sure that the board is not operating arbitrarily. And so we need to have clearly defined circumstances, which is why we have worded this proposal the way we did. And the reason why I would just also put this to the board is that all of these other jurisdictions that have been able to act in a way that the board hasn't, they all acted because of the state of emergency. and they all made detailed findings exactly based on what we are now putting in our language. So they all made detailed findings based on the state of emergency, why the rent freeze was necessary to protect the public health and safety. So we have taken that language and put it in this proposal. And so I would encourage the board to leave the language as it is.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
I always like that's why we have our general counsel. Of course, you know, it's a business decision for us, but I'm compelled by the comments that Allison made. That is kind of true. They all are tied to pretty specific findings. So again, I'm good to move this forward to City Council with the understanding from all of us here that we still have to advocate if we want to fix the situation for this year. And I'll leave it as is then.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. So to continue my comment, thank you, Allison, and stick around, Allison. We might have a couple more questions. So a few of the callers mentioned things throughout the entire evening. There have been mention of things. Why can't we do more? Why don't we do more? And part of serving on this board is immersing yourself in this law and availing yourself of staff and council to get these kinds of questions answered on the daily, on the weekly. And we are volunteers, just for all our large audience listening. We get $75 per meeting stipend that is taxed. We are largely volunteers, though we are elected. It's not our job. We are a board that oversees a staff of 25. It's our job to make policy and guide policy, both through political consideration of our constituencies and sticking to the law at the same time. So it's a delicate balance that the 5 of us do, in this case 4 of us. It's a delicate balance between we hear what the constituents are saying. We're hearing, why wouldn't we protect renters more? We hear you. Of course, I hear you, and I agree with you. However, there has been years of court battles over rent control by property owners, and in some cases, parts of the real estate industry, who don't like rent control or don't like certain aspects of it, and courts have made findings that dictate that we can't just arbitrarily choose a rent level each year, because that would be litigated, and it already has been litigated. It's settled science. And that's why some cities have general law, some cities are charter cities. You know, we are a charter city. We'd have to change the entire makeup of our city structure under the state of California to be an entirely different kind of city, to have some more leeway than we do. But even those cities that do it by ordinance, like LA, where they were changing it more quickly, have to withstand lawsuits. They have to use a measure or a formula to establish rent levels, in this case, or rent control. So, and most of those cities use approximately a 75% of a CPI. That's how our Measure GA was calculated 10 years ago. That was what was taken into consideration. What do all the other jurisdictions usually come up with? What is court tested? What do we kind of have to stick close to live by? So I just want to say, as much as I wish I could send a recommendation to City Council right now on this item 11D that says 20 other things, this year in this election cycle, we've debated for multiple months already a small handful of very carefully considered good government changes to the rent control charter, starting before we knew what this inflation number was. And now, just so everybody understands, we cannot continue, to have this conversation week after week, month after month, because City Council is on a deadline as well with the Election Commission in Los Angeles County to get ballot measures to them in a very timely fashion. So we are out of time this year. Now, I'm not saying that's ideal, but what we'll have to do is, as a community, one caller said we need to do more, we need to do other things. In 2 years, we can do this again. We can make other common sense changes. But this is what I feel like we have worked with as a subcommittee and as a board, with our staff, with our general counsel, to come up with the most legally viable tool to help the most tenants and use that protective blanket that's over the entire community that is rent control. It doesn't always fit every household. It doesn't always fit every landlord. It doesn't always fit every tenancy in the wonderful way that we wish it would. But in order to preserve it and protect it, this is what we can do for now. We can always try to do more in the next cycle. So I move that we propose to City Council this charter change.
Okay.
Second.
As written in Exhibit A, just to be clear for the record, correct?
Well, I'm trying to find the language I would quote, but it's this ability set forth by council. Yeah. I think it's
Exhibit A.
Exhibit
as attached as Exhibit A. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, sorry, on the back. Yes, I couldn't find it. Yes.
Okay. Very good. And I believe there was a second by Commissioner Triosis. Is that correct?
Correct. Second.
Okay.
Sorry to be so long-winded. There's so many issues to try to cover, and it's very, very sad and it's very frustrating, even for us. And thank you, public, so much for all the comments tonight. We wish you would come every month and learn and watch our cases and listen to staff reports and listen to 2 hours. In a city where if your tenancies, if they mean this much, then it's worth putting in a little bit of time. We will help you. You can email any of us anytime. Our staff will help you anytime. Answer your questions in between meetings. Anytime. There are renter organizations to get involved with. There are landlord organizations to get involved with. You know, there are ways we want to help you, and we really, really do welcome this participation. Sorry, I will stop talking.
All your points were very well made. Thank you. So we have a first and a second to approve the proposed language stated in Exhibit A and submitted to the City Council. I believe I stated that accurately. May we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Commissioner Sultan.
Yes.
Commissioner Triosis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
Chair Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 12A, which is a recommendation to declare a vacancy on the Rent Control Board and discuss procedures for appointment of a commissioner. May we have a staff report?
Yes, you may. So as you have all said, we really welcome the participation of the public tonight in our public hearings, and it's great to see that. And you've all done a lot of work tonight, hard work, missing 1/5 of your team, essentially, because Commissioner Phyllis resigned at the end of the May meeting. And I want to thank Commissioner Phyllis for the dedication that she showed in serving on the board, and was sorry to see her step down. But that leaves a vacancy, which again, the charter directs how this vacancy is to be filled. And it says that the board must move expeditiously to declare the vacancy and solicit interest in the position, and then appoint a new commissioner as quickly as possible. So we have been faced with this situation before, and the process we have followed is we would ask Chair Duran to declare the vacancy, and then we would like to discuss with you the process. You have it in your staff report that we would publicize the vacancy widely using the daily press and social media and contacting neighborhood groups, all of the outreach that we can possibly do. And we would recommend that we would ask that people fill out the application. So one of the things we want to discuss with you tonight is the application that was with your staff report. if you have changes that you would like to make to it or things you'd like to add. And then we would ask people to submit their applications by July 6th so that we could provide all of the applications to the board in their usual packet a week before the meeting. That would be on July 7th. And then what we've done in the past is we've invited the interested people to participate in the board meeting and make a presentation, a 3-minute presentation or a 5-minute presentation, give the board the opportunity to learn more about the applicants. And ideally, you would make an appointment that evening. It would take the vote of 3 commissioners to appoint a new commissioner. And we would swear that person in and they would join you for the meeting on July 14th. So tonight we are asking for Chair Duran to declare the vacancy and then for us to discuss the application and the process.
Okay, so shall I do that and then we'll have the discussion on procedure? Okay,
yes,
then, all right, then I declare that there is a vacancy on the Rent Control Board. And if that's all that needs to be said, then we can move on to discussing procedures on how to fill that vacancy.
So does anybody have any comments on the application, any ideas for changes, things you'd like to add?
Yeah.
Commissioner
Trosas, I saw your hand first. Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I think that we need a few more questions. I think that we should ask a question about their involvement in Santa Monica. So, like, you know, how long have you lived here? How have you, like, what's your involvement in the community? I think we just talk about like the vision for the Rent Control Board and the role it plays in Santa Monica, but I think we want to promote service generally. We want to have folks who are interested in improving our community. I don't know if my other commissioners feel like that's a necessary question. And then the second question, I'll wait. And then the second question that I wanted to add is, what do you think the top 3 priorities of the Rent Control Board should be? Should you be chosen to serve?
Okay. So if you look at the first page of the application, it does ask how many years somebody has resided in Santa Monica.
Okay, I looked at the questions. Fair enough, it does say that.
And then it does say specify current or prior service on city boards or commissions and list your community.
Okay. So it's like the council application then.
It's very similar, yeah.
Yeah, I was literally only looking at this page, but I still think, for me, I don't want to tell someone, like, I want to hear from them what they think the priorities of the rent board should be, because I think that indicates to me like what kind of commissioner that they would be and what they would want to work on.
Do you want to just reword number 3 rather than add another question? Do you want to reword number 3 to be more specific to your point? See it? What is your vision for the rent?
I feel like this is like a more specific, like 3 is general, 3A or whatever could be more specific. I just want to, like, I want a listing of what I want a specific answer. So maybe if we want to get at a specific answer, we could ask this in a different way. I just want to know that, like, someone has actually researched and has followed what this entails and what some priorities would be, or even if the person said, like, I don't like what you did on XYZ and I would want to work on A, B, and C topic. I don't know. Does that make any sense to anyone, or am I just rambling?
No, I think that makes sense.
It makes sense. Absolutely. I think it does fit naturally into number 3. So maybe this is just a suggestion. I'm just kind of spitballing here. List the top 3 or 4 items you'd like to accomplish, and how does that relate to your vision of what the Rent Control Board, the role is in Santa Monica, or something along those lines.
I don't want I don't want to overly complicate it. I agree.
I think that Chair Duran, I think what you've said and what Chair Duran has said, we could put the question together and add on to three, list the top 3 or 4 priorities you think the board should address. So I think we could modify 3 and incorporate the priorities to say include within your response something about, the priorities. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Commissioner Sultan.
Trying to unmute myself and see through all these windows I have here. I like that addition. One other thought I had, so the first question asks for qualifications, experience, education, and then specifically any technical or professional expertise, which is great. But I do wonder, it sounded like a lot of the callers that called in today, I don't know if they're interested in being on the rent board, but, a lot of people may not have like professional experience, but maybe like lived experience as a renter or a landlord or, that may inform, their interest in this work. So I'm wondering if there's a way to call out like non-professional experience. I don't know what if it would be personal experience or something that's a bit broader than that.
I like lived experience, so Naomi.
Okay, we could just use like lived experience.
I mean, because that could be like, hi, I'm formerly incarcerated and I've been a victim of housing discrimination, and then I got really involved in like my tenant organize. I don't know, like there could be a lot of random things that people, not random, I don't want to be little.
So what is a good question that would elicit that category of information then? So we just need the wording of a question.
No, I think we just want to add lived experience, right?
Yeah, so it could be like, please list any, technical, professional, and or lived experience you have. Or we could put, lived experience, first. I mean, do we need both technical and professional? Maybe just lived and or.
Maybe we could take the technical out and list any professional or lived experience you have, or professional expertise or lived experience.
Yeah.
And take out technical.
I think, in all fairness, taking out technical would be good because I have no technical abilities whatsoever, and so I've been on here for a while. So that's a good suggestion. I think taking that out and adding professional or lived experiences, I think that's great.
Mr. Ho just reminded me that there may be people who would like to speak on this, so we should we should do that, and then we can continue discussing it. Thank you, Mr. Ho.
Thank you. My apologies. Yes, there is a person. I have Danielle Charney, who has 1 minute.
Yes,
which is calculated based on the prior opportunities to speak. You have 1 minute to speak on this item.
Yes, Ms. Charney, you have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yes, I would like to say that as much as I fear landlords' intentions where it comes to this, or most of them, there are some really good ones, and they are some of the original affordable housing providers. I think it would be interesting to have one of them on there, as long as they're sincere. And I think Elaine, as much as we don't agree on politics, is someone who brings a great deal to the table. She's certainly committed to the community, and she's funny as hell. So I'd like to just suggest that perhaps this might be a consideration to have a little bit of that balance up there. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Well, this application will be sent out to the public, and anybody who has a desire to serve on the board will be able to submit their application for sure. So, yeah, feel free to apply if you'd like to jump in with us. Any other speakers who requested to speak, Mr. Ho?
No, that was our final request to speak for the evening.
Okay, thank you, and my apologies. I Forgot to mention that when I opened up this item. So now back to discussion. Any more things? Any other hands raised? Anybody needs to say anything about this item?
Well, I do want to just say that lived experience includes being a housing provider. So, I mean, I think that's all kinds of lived experience, just in case I wasn't clear.
Okay.
All right, then. So we will make those modifications to the application and we will publicize it starting next week so that we can begin to receive applications. And I will be happy to speak with anybody who is interested in the position. You can contact me here at the Rent Control Agency at 310-458-8751 or send me an email at tracy.condon@santamonica.gov. Be happy to talk with anybody that's interested.
And my understanding is that we'll get a list of people and they'll have an opportunity to speak with us if they want to. But just so that there's an awareness out there and a clarification for myself, will we be able to ask them questions on the dais, so to speak?
Sure.
Okay, so then they should be prepared then as part of this process that they may be asked questions by us and to be ready to give answers, kind of like an interview, only they're doing it, at a rent control board meeting. That'd be
Is
fair.
this during their 3 minutes?
Well, we would do this right at the beginning of the meeting, like in the special agenda items, and I think it would be a good idea to give people an idea of how long you intend to give them to speak so that they can be prepared for either 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you would like to give them. And then I think after they make their presentation, then I think you could ask them comments that would not be within their time period. Ask them questions.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is they'll have either 3 or 5 minutes to make their comments to us. And then if we have questions we want to ask after that time period, we can do so and then move to the next one when we're done. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe we could set a number. If we have 10 applicants, then you give them 5 minutes. If we have 20 applicants, you give them 3. I don't know how you would like to do that, or if you just want to set a certain number of minutes.
It's always been 3 where I come from in my experience. It's always been 3 minutes because we do have this large application. We do have the opportunity to ask them questions. It's always been 3 in anything I've ever participated in or giving a speech about oneself. With unlimited ability to ask them more questions.
That makes sense to me. Go ahead.
I would just encourage all the people who are actually serious about this to try to meet with us in advance as well, because I think that gives you the opportunity to have a candid discussion, not in a public, happy to have it in a public setting as well, but, I'm happy to talk to folks about what I think it means to be on the rent control board. And therefore, I think 3 minutes with follow-up questions is sufficient.
Okay. That seems to be the consensus. 3 minutes with follow-up questions. Commissioner Sultan, anything to add?
That sounds fair to me.
Okay. Well, why don't we do that if we can, Ms. Condon, 3 minutes for them to present to us, which is a lot of time when you're talking, frankly. And then we'll open it up to questions if we have any. Do we need to do a motion or anything of that sort for this?
No, we don't need a motion for this. You've given us direction and we will proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. Then moving on to item 16, which is adjournment. Before I ask for motion, our next Rent Control Board meeting is July 14th, 2022 at 7 p.m. And it is to be determined whether we'll be teleconference or in person in the council chambers. But it sounds like it'll be teleconference, but who knows? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right, first.
All of our callers. Thank you all for participating.
Agree. Vice Chair Foster was the first. I'll second. I didn't know if anybody else did. My thing froze up. So roll call vote.
Yes. Commissioner Sultan.
Yes.
Commissioner Trosis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
And Chair Duran.
Yes. Thank
Motion
you all
carries.
for your participation.
Thank you,
Appreciate
everybody.
it.
Good night.
Bye-bye.